We'll be turning back the clock to the late 1970s, at least occasionally, here on the MKT Sedalia subdivision. Why I'm featuring a different era right now on the main track. Hey friends, and welcome back to the main track. You can see today I'm running something a little bit different here on the layout. These brand new GP40s by Rapido feature a couple of different paint schemes you would have seen on the Katy Railroad in the 1970s. First up, this colorful Bicentennial red, white, and blue unit, and this brilliant red and white. Well, these units are great, but they're not necessarily perfect, and I'll point out a little something I found on these in just a little bit. Well, real quickly here, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who entered our contest for a copy of my book, Show Me Katy. The winners have been selected, and the usernames for the lucky ones are appearing right now. Now, if you're one of these, just shoot me an email at mike@themaintrack.com, and we will get that book right to you. Well, a big congrats, and I'll encourage everyone to stay tuned for future episodes where I plan on doing some more giveaways of our products. Now, as always with these episodes where I'm taking a look at model train products, this is not a comprehensive review, but simply an overview. We'll be doing a quick dive into the backstory of these locomotives and some of the key things that stick out to me about the models themselves. Now, one of the great fun debates in the Katy Railfan community is, do you prefer green or red? I'll spare everyone the in-depth history lesson here, but from the mid-1960s through the early 70s, Katy's units were painted in this bright red and white scheme. Well then, starting in 1972 and lasting through the end of the Katy's existence in the late 80s, the paint scheme was this green and yellow, with these stripes that are impossible to miss. Well, adding to the hodgepodge is this one-off patriotic unit. Well, being that my layout represents the summer of 1987, I'm definitely a green guy, and that's not changing. So don't worry, I'm not switching eras for my layout on a regular basis. But I thought it would be neat to occasionally backdate my operations by a decade or so to 1977, just to mix things up for operations and photo ops. Well, these units won't even be on my layout 99% of the time, just here and there when I want to wind back the clock. Well, number 200 was originally red, but it was painted into the Bicentennial red, white, and blue in 1975. It was in preparation for celebrating the 200th birthday of the U.S. in 1976. Now, it was only in these colors for a couple of years and was painted green and yellow at the end of 1977. Well, 200 had some interesting ties to the Sedalia subdivision that I'm modeling. Well, it showed up often on trains like this one heading through Clinton in the summer of 1976. And then, in 1977, the unit led what's believed to be the first train over the newly completed Truman Lake Bridge. Well, number 200 also had a matching caboose, number 76, that was eventually placed on display in Windsor, Missouri in 1989. I always make a point to stop by when passing through town. Well, as I mentioned, the red ruled the road until Katy rolled out the green and yellow in 1972, and that resulted in a colorful transition era through the 1970s with a mix of red and green. Well, it was like that until everything had been repainted by the early 1980s, and the last red GP40 was painted green in 1980. So having just a couple of these red units will be more than plenty for me. And even when I do run in 77, the red will always be mixed with a majority of green units to reflect what you would have seen on the road at the time. Well, I think it's pretty neat that Rapido rolled these red units out about a year after we got the green and yellow units. Now for these red units, I'm having to do some updating in order to backdate. Now these Rapido units come as they looked in 1967 when they were brand new, so that means they have footboards. Now, footboards were outlawed in 1972 because of safety reasons. The railroads had until 1978 to remove those, and most were gone by 1977. Now, the footboards on these Rapido units pop off pretty easily, and an X-Acto knife makes quick work of the bracket holding them on. Now, I may touch up the bottom with some red paint where the black plastic from the thin slice that I cut is showing through, but the pilot is going to be heavily weathered eventually with plenty of grit and grime, so you wouldn't notice either way. Well, also, all the road numbers that Rapido went with were units that were already painted green by 1977. so we'll have to choose a couple of units that were still in red at that point and renumber them to reflect those. Well, now comes the part where I get to be that guy and point out something that was a little off with these units. Now, if you've watched the channel for a while, you know I've always been pretty impressed with Rapido's models and their fantastic detail. Well, I'll post my video about the green GP40s above and in the description below. But on these red units, take a quick look at the blower housing right behind the cab on the fireman's side. Now, the bottom is supposed to be flat and flush with the walkway. But on these, they're several inches up, and there's about a scale 5 to 6 inch gap where there's not supposed to be. Well, I did some research and found out this was not just a one-off with the units I got. Well, if you look at the official Rapido photos online, here is number 182, and you can also see the gap. Now, for comparison, this is not an issue on the Bicentennial unit or on the green GP40s. When I did some researching, this is what I found. Well, that blower housing is mounted where it's supposed to be on the body, but the walkway below is a little warped and it's dipping down, and that's creating the gap. Well, I reached out to Rapido, which told me it looks like the issue happened during the assembly process. Well, in particular, the tabs holding the body to the frame are not clipped correctly. Well, they offered to fix my problem if I pack the units up and send them in for a warranty repair, or I can disassemble the units and tackle the job myself. Well, it's just the one unfortunate thing that caught my eye on these units, which are otherwise pretty fantastic. So what are your thoughts on this? Is this a make or break deal for the locomotives? Well, I'm apt to say no, especially since it sounds like it's something that can be fixed easily, and Rapido has been very responsive and helpful. Of course, these units are not cheap, but I understand sometimes things happen in the manufacturing process. Well, again, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Well, for now, we're looking forward to the next time we rewind the clock back to 1977 here on my MKT Sedalia subdivision layout. Well, until next time here on the main track, all aboard and all the best.